What up? It's your boy, The Incredible Man, and I'm back at it again. And I know I'm the world's latest, but I just seen Vinland Saga episode 1, and I gotta admit, man, I loved it. I loved it. I love getting a good history lesson, and then it's combined with an anime, and it's this good. Then there's action scenes, then there's storytelling, then there's a good plot. There's a bunch of stuff going on, but this anime has it all that you want from a historical drama, action-packed anime. This has everything, man. Now, I can't really have a reference to it because I haven't read the manga, or I haven't seen like the actual TV show Vikings, so I have no major history on the fact. The only thing I do know is that the guy that's in the village, not Thor's, Leif Erikson. I know he's in that show Vikings, and like his name is like always thrown around when it's pertaining to anything Viking related. His name is always mentioned. So I know that part, but that's like the only thing I know, man. But so going into this, I knew nothing of Vikings or anything like that. But this seems like it's going to give me a good backstory and everything. Excuse me, there's something in my eye. Okay. It seems like it's going to give me a good backstory and everything, so I'm sticking with it, man. In episode 1, I'm not going to be like, well, it was like just super duper hyped over because it wasn't super duper action packed, but I loved it because it gave me info, and this was, and episode 1 was like it. I know, but episode 1 was character building. I don't know if anyone else felt like that, but to me, episode 1 was character building. It gave us a brief backstory on Leif Erikson, a small action-packed sequence of Thor's. Then we kind of get to see his son growing up. We get introduced to his wife, the village. We in the flashback with him fighting, we see a friend of his, and we see his daughter. So and we learn like the brief history of why they're living in Iceland because they fled Norway. So it was this story. This episode was more storytelling and character development to me. Like it developed the whole show. This episode, sorry about the train. Episode 1, it dove in, and it started giving us everything that we wanted information wise. Now I know a lot of people was like, they wanted the fights and stuff, but that may be them. But I'm thoroughly intrigued from the storyline part of it because I need to know more. I mean, I haven't seen the show Vikings or anything like that, so my Viking history is not what it needs to be or up to par to understand what's going on. So them giving me nothing but information in this first episode, and hopefully maybe the second one, I'm okay with that. I can take them giving me the information and everything in this first episode and introducing me to the characters and showing me Viking history so I can understand what I'm watching and what I'm reading going forth into this anime. So I totally understand, and I agree with it. Now I feel like that when the action sequences come, they're going to be heavy and they're going to be fantastic because the very first, I keep pointing, the very first like you guys could, like there's something over there. The very first fight scene that happened that we saw with Thor's was fantastic. Dude was just hopping from boat to boat, just slaying these people like it was nothing. Then he went underwater and killed dude with his own sword and threw the sword. There was a lot of stuff going on in that very first action sequence. So I'm okay with them giving me in the rest of the episode information so I'll know what's going on. Because if you haven't read the manga or you're not caught up on Viking history, this is giving you this as a precursor to the whole anime. So I'm okay with it. But let's talk about the episode, man. Okay, like I mentioned, we seen the fight in the very first beginning. We saw Thor's and his friend fighting on boats. So that happened, and dude was beast, man. And his friend was kind of beast too, man. He took like his axe and he just sliced like the mast and like 4 dudes in half. Now that's beast. And dude, these Vikings are like seeing Thor's. Well, that's getting ahead of myself. But anyway, dude, they done some damage on those boats, man. But then we see him getting shot with some arrows because he's kind of constantly daydreaming and dreaming about his wife while he's out fighting. But then all that happens, and it kind of just jumps straight into us seeing his son fetching water and then taking it back to their home, to their village. And dude, the animation, man, okay. Yeah, in some scenes you could definitely tell that it was different from the others, and like not so much as they cut corners, but it just wasn't as heavily detailed. But it wasn't bad. It still was very great, but it just wasn't as heavily detailed. But then you'll get scenes like when Thorsten, I think that's his name, is milking the cow and feeding the sheep. That whole sequence when he was in the barn was absolutely did you see the detail in the muscles on the cow, and then the hay, how detailed it was, and then the sheep's how detailed and how well drawn their face was, and their horns and everything. The animation is on point, and the backgrounds and the whole world, and like when they showed the pictures of Norway and everything else, was absolutely glorious. The animation is there. And then the scores that played when there was really heavy packed scenes and action, the action sequences, and like when they were building emphasis on a story, the score that was playing in the background, the score, animation, and quality in it, that's all A plus. There's nothing to debate about that. It was all good. But let's continue the story, man. Then we get to the part where, after all that happened, we see Leif Erikson telling stories about, finding Vinland and everything. So then some of the kids was like, well, my grandfather said that, this particular thing happened. Like, Jormungand, I think that's what they called it. And then, like, he's always trying to stop you, and then, like, the water just falls off. Like, it showed, like, a picture, like, where they're assuming that the earth is flat. It's a whole bunch of stuff going on around that. I'd have to rewatch that part again to kind of really get the whole grasp of what he was saying. But then, like, some of the kids was calling him a liar, and like, my grandfather said this and that and stuff. And then even Thorsten was like, well, I don't believe you anymore, Leif, and everything. But that moment, I'm gonna skip some stuff, but that moment was very nice. But then and I was like, oh, all of these kids was listening to his story, and all of a sudden they're not interested anymore. But when it comes back to a call around, when Leif is telling them the stories about why they were in Iceland, and he was like, no, I don't believe it. And then, like, it comes back later to where his father tells him, well, that's what we were told, and that's our history, that they pretty much, it was either be underlings to this guy or leave and live on our own. And we left, and that was a nice callback to where he didn't believe anything that Leif said, but when he asked his dad confirmed everything that Leif said. So that was a nice callback. But after Leif was telling the kids these stories, then they pan to a shot outside of we all knew it was a slave because he had a collar and a chain on, a slave walking in the snow, and he could see their village. But let's talk about the slave, man. Then I'm going to talk about something else. Dude had been walking, I don't know, I'm assuming for a minute, because like, dude hands probably like all the way up to his elbows, or maybe to his forearm. I'm pointing like you guys can see, or maybe to his forearm, and like all of his legs, they were rotten and they were dead. There was no saving them, and they were gone. So imagine how long he had to be out in the cold and in the snow for that to happen, to where like they were gone and there was no chance of saving them. That was messed up. And now I love that though, because that's so detailed in the anime's perspective. A lot of times they just, a lot of certain anime probably wouldn't even touch on the fact that he had got frostbite, and like his legs and arms were completely gone. They were just still attached because he couldn't use them at all anymore. But that's just little nitpicks like that is what really makes stuff like this really great to me, man. I don't know if anybody else felt that way, but stuff like that, it really done it for me. But then we get introduced to his sister, and I'm gonna be real. His mom is very pretty, but his sister is kind of she's kind of like wild, but she's also very attractive, and like the way that she presents herself. Like you like, you know, like you see that one chick that you're like, oh well, she's very pretty and sophisticated, and she's very pretty. But then you got this other chick that like she's a little rough around the edges, but she's very, very pretty. That's what his sister was to me. But then we shoot to the next day on they're cleaning off the roof of their house and from the snow that like just fell all that night. And the sister was like, well, Dad, why can't we get a slave to have all this manual labor and stuff and do this stuff? And her father was, you know, he kind of shrugged it off and was like, no, that's not us. And then she falls off the roof and comes and we knew watching this episode that she was going to come in contact with the slave, but she falls off the roof and then she feels something under the snow and it's the slave. So all of that was there's a lot of miniature Easter eggs like in the earlier part of the episode that leads, and it plays all the way through. So I love that, and Vinland Saga is doing a great job of that point. Then we get to the point to where we find out that the slave ran away from its slave owner, and its slave owner came to collect the slave. Now this is the part that I really wanted to talk about, man, because dude, when he got there, and then everybody in the village was worried, like what was going to happen, if they were going to have to fight or anything like that. Dude, one of his subordinates and one of the members of the village was kind of having a heated argument, and he was like, I don't care, because the dude cut his arm off and he was angry, but he cut off the dude's brother's leg. So there was just a whole bunch of conflict going on. But dude was like, I don't care what the law or anything says, I'm going to take your arm for taking my arm. And the dude that came to collect the slave, what was his name? Something with an H. I can't remember. But dude, like, for some reason he's like in love with chains, but he took this chain and wrapped it around dude's head and like all over around all that part and snatched it. And like, dude, when he snatched everything, like the flesh, it didn't give us a clear picture of like how dude's face looked. They kind of like showed it, but it was kind of like, you know, like when you take a picture with your phone with your phone and it's kind of like blurry in the background, and you can do like the whole depth perception type thing. That's what they kind of showed us with him. Like we saw something happen here, and like we got a whole close up of everything else, but we just kind of saw his face in the background, and it was blurry. We didn't really see a clear picture, but we could tell that like all of that was just ate up from where he just snatched the chain. But when they done the close up, and like one of the most prettiest pictures I've ever seen of a chain, when it was like all close, it was like that. You could see it in the camera, and it was lined up, and like it had hair. Oh, okay, there we go. It had hair and blood and everything wrapped around the chain. How like little bitty itty bitty strings of hair and everything wrapped around the chain, dude. That was, that is detail, man. That's how you put detail into an anime when you animate something, man. But then we get to the point to where dude bust up in their house and was like, well, I want my slave back because him running away sets a bad example, and I need him to come back so I can torture him in front of all the other slaves so they know not to do this. And Thor's was like, give me this slave. How much did you pay for him? And then he was like, well, give me this slave for 3 sheep. And he was like, no, 4 sheep. And he was like, no, I want double of that. 8 sheep. And this whole time when this whole thing was happening, like he was like going back and forth like how much he wanted for the slave and how many sheep he wanted for him. His daughter was up there like, huh? No, we can't give him 8 sheep. No, we can't. So it had its comedic moments as well. There wasn't that many comedic moments, but it had some, and the ones that they had, they were very nice. But I understand why they didn't have that many. They wanted to tell the story itself, and that's totally great, man. Because as I said in the very beginning of this video, I enjoyed it. And then after they buy the slave, he ends up dying like right after, and then it shows the sister at the grave site, and she's just crying, and her brother's like, why are you crying? And he was like, because we paid 8 sheep for him, and like right after he died. So I mean, so like it had comedic moments, but there wasn't that many, and they knew, and they played it very well. So the comedic moments that came, they were very enjoyable when they came. And then after that, man, it pretty much, it showed not a flashback. We got a glimpse of the friend that was a friend of his dad's. that was like when they were fighting. I'm assuming it had to be some kind of war or something. But when they were fighting, that friend, I'm assuming, is coming to their village. I'm hoping. I gotta watch episode 2 to find out for sure. But yeah, man. Then we get a preview, like kind of like where it's kind of just in it, like it pans and pans and pans, and it shows a chest in the back of the house, and then they go inside the chest, and there's a bunch of weapons and swords and stuff. And I'm assuming that's gonna come heavy in the next couple episodes or in the episodes that's upcoming. I don't know, but this is way longer than what I wanted to be, man, because I just couldn't stop talking about it. It was just that good, man. But this is your boy Nick Incredible. Don't forget to smash that like button till you can't smash it anymore. Comment down below and I'll be sure to respond to each and every one of them. And subscribe, but only if you really want to, man. And remember that anime matters, anime is greatness, and anime is life. And Vinland Saga is greatness, man. Peace out.